The Independent National Electoral Commission has declared the governorship election in the southeastern Anambra state inconclusive. Professor Florence Obi, returning officer of the election, made the announcement overnight. She said the election could not end on the first ballot because there was no voting in Ihiala, local government area of the state. Justifying her action with the Electoral Act, Obi said the supplementary election will hold in Ihiala on Tuesday.
Given the foregoing, it becomes imperative to bring Ihiala local government area at par with the other 20 local government areas in this election before we can make a valid declaration or take any further action based on the extant law. Therefore, I, Professor Florence Banku Obi, in my capacity as returning officer for this election, hereby announce the suspension of the process of collation of results and declaration of a winner until the supplementary election is held in the 326 polling units in Ihiala local government area of the state. I have conferred with the Commission, being the body responsible for fixing the date of the election, and the Commission has decided that the supplementary election will take place on Tuesday, 9th November 2021. Therefore, the collation of results shall resume thereafter.
Right. Another inconclusive elections in Nigeria, making the 6th or the 7th now, if my memory serves me right.
I think it's more than that, actually, unfortunately. I think there were 6 in the 2019 election. Prior to that, we had, are you counting like the Senate race, for example, the late Dora Akinyuli? Are we counting that, or are we just counting governorship
race?
Oh, okay, so that's why it might be different. I feel anxious about this. It's triggered my personal PTSD when election results are being announced and all of a sudden there's a hitch in there. So I never really enjoy this kind of tension. And I truly cannot wait till Tuesday when all this is done and dusted. I cannot begin to imagine how the Soludo camp and the APGA camp are feeling at this point, because they were in a clear lead, but they might want to take comfort from the fact that this happened with Willie Obiano, didn't it? That was another inconclusive election. I think that was 2015 was that? And it turned out in his favor in the end. But yes, I guess the thinking is that the people of Ihiala, they have 148,407 registered voters, that it will be unfair to disenfranchise them. But I just wish that this was not happening. It just looks bad for the whole exercise, which was marred with a few hiccups. There were pros and cons in the whole thing. We congratulated the people of Anambra who were able to show up and who were able to be patient and resilient in the face of the little beavers, drawbacks that happened. I won't call it a debacle, it's not that bad, but it was pretty embarrassing that it didn't go as smoothly as it ought to have done. The voter turnout was low, as expected, but at least people did show up, and I think those people really are heroes in this democracy, that they really tried their best to make their voices heard. And unfortunately, we have this inconclusive election that is now turned out to be. We also had vote buying. There was all kinds of dramas with this gentleman in Orumba North saying that he was forced the collation process, that there was some coercion there. And then this other report of somebody carting off result sheets, is that Idemili South? Carted off the result sheets there. So it's unfortunate that we're having this, and it all turned out to be inconclusive.
Dr. Batu?
Okay, I think on the whole, people will be relieved that the worst that was expected did not happen.
Yes.
There were fears that there would be a massive, outbreak of violence. That did not happen. There were reported cases of violence in some places, Idemili South, where you have, that you mentioned. In Orumba North, the disagreement between the collation officer and the electoral officer, the late deployment of election materials by Inec, resulting in the extension of voting time, the failure of the biometric voting accreditation system, which Inec had said it tested in Delta and it was going to use again in Anambra. Issues already pointed out in Ihiala local government area. Well, the security agencies were also yesterday evening commended by the convener of the Situation Room, NLB, who appeared on This Day Live here on this station. So on the whole, it looks like, yes, well, the worst that was expected did not happen. Voter turnout in most places was between 10 and 15%. But when the voting time was extended, more people came out. And we saw the spectacle, you know, in terms of the people's expectations and their willingness to be part of the process. However, in Ihiala local government area where there was an issue, Inec has now said the election on the basis of that is inconclusive. As you said, yes, so as not to disenfranchise anybody and also to provide an opportunity so that on the whole, the election can be adjudged free, fair, and credible. And there was the other constitutional issue about how the winning candidate must be seen to have won 2/3, a certain percentage in 2/3 of the state. Already, from the result that we have seen, the APGA candidate already has that, having been declared winner in 18 of the local governments. However, would this, put an end to it, the entire process? Tomorrow, there will be that supplementary election in Ihiala local government area, if we can use that phrase. But already, the All Progressives Congress had put out a statement challenging the outcome of the election and threatening to go all the way to the Supreme Court. Well, that's part of the process. But for now, from what I have seen, it's only the APC that is threatening litigation. But that the election itself took place at all, and that we have a clear front runner who is leading with more than 50,000 votes. I guess that at the end of the day, the process will be conclusive. And we hope that Inec, that was engaged in a chest-beating round before that election, assuring everyone that they were prepared, we also learned some lessons from this, both in terms of electronic transmission of results and also in terms of the deployment of the beavers, which they made every weather out of. And then, of course, the civil society monitors who were all effectively on the ground. So I think that, one of those things that happens in Nigeria, just when you think everything will collapse and go wrong, then, of course, Nigeria has a way of pulling back from the brink. And I join you in congratulating the people of Anambra State, in reassuring Nigerians that, the situation in Anambra is not as bad as anybody thought. And, of course, the non-state actors also did not do anything dramatic to, disrupt the situation. And we hope that tomorrow in Ihiala, the same peace, relative peace, that made it possible for the election to be conducted on Saturday will also be made available with all the security agencies and other players making sure that this happens.
In all of this, I think my greatest joy is the fact that we did not hear one occurrence of bloodshed as a result of these elections. Leading up to the election, there were many killings in the state. But on election day, nobody was killed for going out to vote. That's the satisfactory part of all of this for me. That no one single person died in going out to exercise their franchise. We'll go for a quick break. We'll come back for more updates. APGA governorship candidate Charles Soludo has expressed his satisfaction with INEC's conduct of the election. Our ICE correspondent, Ovieteme, put together this report.
While the announcement of results was on at the Inec Collation Center in Oka, children were trooping into the country home of the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance in Isofia, Agwata local government area of Anambra State. For the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, hosting the children is an annual ritual. On this day, the children who are beneficiaries of his scholarship scheme have come to give him some form of kindergarten support.
Shout hallelujah!
Yes! We want Professor Soludo to be the governor of Anambra State in the mighty name of Jesus.
The grateful candidate of the APGA looks satisfied at the moment.
We witnessed what you might call the people's power play out in Anambra's governorship election. Initially, there were, technological glitches, but in the end, the system came through. Inec came through and delivered on its assurances to have a free, fair, transparent electoral system. I am a process person, and I always have. I'm always very, very optimistic about our institutions. They may fail sometimes, but in the end, something comes to hang together. All through this process, I have believed in the process, both in the party process, the primaries, the court process. I believed, and I said when there was the Jigawa judgment, that I believed that the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court will come through, and they did, to the acclamation of all Nigerians, that the Appeal Court and the Supreme Court came to the rescue. I sat in my polling booth for hours in my belief and optimism in the system, that in the end the system will still pull through, and it did. And I want to specifically commend Inec, the leadership, and all its entire staff, because they lived up to the assurances that we were given. The intent, the purpose, and the design and deployment, I would say I will rate it over 80%, 90% even. Excellent. It should be recommended, because I think that process, that technology, is a very giant step on our road to having free, fair, transparent electoral system. Albeit that in the future, maybe the staff may need to be trained better in terms of handling the machines and so on and so forth. But in the end, it came through. And Anambra people, the results trickling in, we're still waiting. It's watchful waiting. Whether it takes them hours or days or whatever it takes for them to declare the result, we'll patiently wait. This journey, in my view, is a divine journey. Which has begun, and I always said that at the beginning of my campaigns and at the end, that it is what is written, and no one can battle with the Lord, and He will perfect that which He has started.
Ovietime George, Arise News.
All right, that's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Roto Sudiri Michael Wilson to give us updates on Africa Global Business. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Our dependable Roto Sudiri is back to give us an African business update.
Indeed, good morning.
Over to you, Roto.
Good morning, Doctor. Thank you. Great to be back. Great to be back. Missed you all. Hey, look, all eyes on Anambra State, right? And I guess the results are inconclusive. Just so, of course, you guys spoke with Ovietime George there, and we heard from Charles Soludo, who is leading at this point. So it's not conclusive. However, it has revived the whole technocrats debate. Him being a former central bank governor of the central bank, we saw his performance in the debates, which folks said was the best performance of the one that that Arise News covered. If you look here at this 2021 fiscal performance ranking, this is from Budgets, the civil advocacy body that talks about budget transparency and making state finances more transparent to the public. And if you look at this fiscal performance ranking, you'll see that Anambra State ranks number 3. And what the number of metrics that they used for this ranking is based on whether or not these states have enough revenue that can cover their obligations, and also their spending priorities, whether those spending priorities focused on capital expenditure. According to Budget, only 3 states, Rivers, Lagos, and Anambra, are able to cover their obligations based on their combined revenues from FAC allocations and internally generated revenue. And while we're on the subject of technocrats, I mean, Edo State is at number 9, Gordon Obaseki, former investment banker. You've got Kaduna at number 6. I mean, we see what El Rufai has been doing with CAD Invest year after year, where they try to bring investors in there. So should Soludo prevail, there's a lot of hope as to what he could bring to Anambra State based on his experience as a former central bank governor. We saw Peter Obi had an impressive tenure at Anambra State. Anambra seems to pride itself on technocrats. Peter Obi, of course, his budget management for Anambra State was very impressive. He also took Anambra State's high, as far as education is concerned, to high rankings. Here you're looking at 5-year internally generated trends. That's IGR growth for Anambra State. It's been on the up and up according to these charts. FAC allocations are also up. You look at year-on-year growth, internally generated revenue, 2019 to 2020, 6.2% growth. FAC actually came down, but if you look at capital expenditure, almost 28% growth for Anambra State. There's another chart here where we should be looking at more of their revenues. So you look at the structure of their revenues there. It's 54% FAC, 28%, or rather, 65% FAC, 34% IGR, which goes to show that a lot of these states still depend on FAC allocations. However, in the middle there, if you look at spending priorities for Anambra State, you can see that the bulk of their spending priorities, about 59% or so, rather 59% has gone towards capital expenditure, and the remaining 40% for operating expenses. And at the bottom of the screen there, total revenues, 89.4 billion naira, exceeds their operating expenses in Anambra State, which is at 47.1. So, again, this is part of the reasons why Anambra is one of only 3 states in the country whose total revenues, again, dependent on FAC, though, is higher than operating. Now, debt, though, Anambra is a bit indebted. So 59.9 billion domestic debt, or 108 million in foreign debt. You can see that debt growth is about 408% between 2016 to 2020. But as far as debt size to position, it's 24th out of 36. But look at that chart to the right. You see that the total debt has been increasing. But still, Anambra State, all eyes on the states. If Soludo does prevail, it will be interesting to see how all these numbers trend if he is to win, looking at what he would bring to the table. And again, whether or not the wider discussion, as to, technocrats in Nigeria, they're best suited to lead the nation. We quickly jump to the NNPC. The NNPC has recorded a 1.2 trillion naira revenue shortfall in the first 9 months of the year. This is, we've talked about the NNPC quite a bit on this day, on the program. This day newspaper did a bit looked at some of their numbers. Well, some of the reasons, oil prices, I guess, for the first part of this year were lower. The last 2 months, against August and September, revenue did tick up for the NNPC. However, the reason why that was attributed to oil price increases. As far as the issues that the NNPC continues to face, we know what they are. Rufai, Tundu, Doctor, you've all mentioned them here. The subsidy, the amount of under recovery that is gulped, that takes up from NNPC's revenues. Also aging infrastructure, and then vandalism. I believe there was about 3.5 billion or so. What the NNPC projected to spend on security for infrastructure, for oil and gas infrastructure, was exceeded because vandalism continues to be a problem in Nigeria. So again, that's a revenue shortfall that they're facing. And now the impact of this is that there will continue to be deductions made to FAC allocations, to the Federation account from the NNPC. Finally, the Bank of Industry, they held a workshop for entrepreneurs, or rather for SMEs, and NPLs, that's non-performing loans. They're saying that it's between 80 to, that should be a percentage, 80% to almost 100%. That is the amount of funds that they've given to entrepreneurs in the country have not been repaid. One of the reasons they stated for that was because, sadly, they say that entrepreneurs in this country, when it comes to loans received from the federal government, they seem to believe that it's a grant, so it's free. They don't have to pay it back. And then, also there's the issues, of course, of the ease of doing business in the nation as well, and stuff like that. But that is a particular problem as far as entrepreneurs are concerned.
It's that thinking of, this is my slice of the national cake.
Right, and I don't have to pay it back.
Yeah. Which is so shocking. And that's what I always think about, that pointing finger. Everybody goes on about the government, especially the federal government, forgetting there's actually a state government.
Right.
It's the federal government, it's Buhari, that's the bane of our existence. But people really need to spend a lot more time looking within.
Right.
There's an integrity issue across the board. It's the culture of a total lack of integrity. And then they made another very interesting point. I want you to explain that to me, because I was actually quite baffled by it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I got it wrong. How entrepreneurs create problems. And we all know the definition for entrepreneurs, the people who solve problems. Why is it in Nigeria ours are creating problems?
Yeah, so the thing is, I guess they're referring to the fact that they're not, as entrepreneurs are supposed to identify a problem and create a solution to those particular problems. I think one of the executives at that workshop at the Bank of Industry said that all they're doing is creating platforms to allow Nigerians to purchase products from overseas. So perhaps he was saying that what they're doing is by not solving Nigeria's problems, and with the bulk of entrepreneurs that are coming forward, taking loans, not paying them back, somehow that kind of adds to the problems that the country is facing. And also the platforms that they're putting forward, they are supposed to be solving issues. But if you're creating platforms that are just allowing people to buy things from overseas, well, you're just adding to our import bill and not really helping things across the country.
I think the challenge... Oh, Dr. Bass, you want to say something? You can go ahead.
I wanted to comment on Anambra. And
okay, go ahead. Go ahead, I'll comment after you.
The report you were quoting from Budget is called the State of States Fiscal Performance Ranking. And in the ranking in 2021, Anambra came third. In 2020, it was second. And it was recognized as one of those states where, in terms of fiscal performance, there's been a considerable improvement. Its IGR went down in the 2021 ranking because in 2020 we had COVID-19. And this, of course, if you look at the statistics provided by Budget, although when we co-moderated the Anambra governorship candidate debate, we had this back and forth at one point with Professor Soludo about the statistics. Some of the statistics we quoted came directly from this Budget report, particularly with regard to unemployment, underemployment, and also with the poverty level, the literacy level, and all of that. But the indication of all this is the good news that Anambra is one of those states where over the years, the government has prioritized capital project development over investment in operating expenses. But even in spite of that, there is a lot that whoever becomes governor at the end of the day would have to do to improve on IGR, one, to attract greater investment, promote trade, and also there are specific assets in the state that the next governor can focus on. Anambra has a large deposits of natural gas. There's a lot that can be done in that area. Anambra also is famous for rice. I think this is Abakaliki, right? Is Abakaliki in... Abakaliki is in Ebonyi, but they also have rice in Anambra, and there's a lot that can be done in that regard. And then there is tourism potential, that has not been well developed. But to be able to do all of this, the next governor of Anambra will have to solve the problem of the roads, particularly major roads around Onitsha, and also roads within the hinterland. The next governor will have to open up the hinterland. It will have to attract both local investment and foreign investment. And, if Soludo gets there at the end of the day, these are not subjects that are strange to him. And to your point about technocrats, well, I think the likely emergence of the likes of Soludo, Peter Obi before him, Nasir El-Rufai before him, will have helped, in my view, to reposition politics in Nigeria. The tendency is for many Nigerian technocrats to say, politics is a dirty affair. But the more serious-minded people, technocrats coming from industry, getting involved in politics, and making a difference in the process, would encourage more technocrats in the future to get into that arena that people say, it's for professional politicians. There's no such thing as professional politicians. The business of governance belongs to all of us, and I would like to see more technocrats in that particular arena.
Same here.
As for people who borrow money and don't want to pay, well, isn't that Nigerian culture? It's seen as national cake. And if it's Bank of Industry, this cultural deficit that we have in terms of how we relate to money that we think is public is part of the problem, in my view.
So two things. I'd like to pick on Bank of Industry first and piggyback onto Anambra afterwards. Yeah. They said something. They said Nigerian entrepreneurs just create platforms to be able to sell products abroad. The question is, the reason why people can innovate abroad, I dial back to the book written by Henry Ford in 1927. It calls it Today and Tomorrow. The reason why people can iterate innovations abroad is because they have access to credit. You can't fail with credit in this part of the world. The interest rates are very high. You don't have access to it in the first place. You don't have social buffers. I think it was Brian Chesky, the guy that set up Airbnb.
Yeah.
For the first couple of months he ran Airbnb, he ran them on credit card bills. You don't have access to that kind of credit. And that's why you see the West will always be the pioneer of the technology and create the platforms where smaller economies like us, smaller entrepreneurs like us can trade. I think once you start to once you start to change the credit dynamics, Nigerian innovators will be more audacious at innovation. Because you see, it costs a lot of money to be able to innovate and create those platforms. But it's a credit problem. Another thing I want to say quickly about Anambra is the fact that, let's not forget that Anambra is the state that has shown that your unemployment numbers can actually drop year on year. Prior to Peter Obi coming in, it was a basket case.
Right.
But you can see successfully the unemployment numbers have dropped year on year, and they've been able to build capital infrastructure. In recent times, if I can remember, they're the only ones that have been able to build an airport from start to finish, deliver in record time, and it's not impacting on their budget, and there's no debt taken for that. So it goes a long way to show the capacity of management.
Right.
And management of resource is everything. And Anambra leads the way on this. It's something we should learn. Some other states like Osho are quick to complain, we don't get enough FAC, we don't get enough this and all that. That's why we can't do capital projects. But you can see that with the little Anambra is still getting, they've been able to create a lot through management. I would love to say more, but no time. Thanks.
Good stuff.
Thank you, Rote.
Yeah, so the people who borrow money, if you borrow, you should pay back.
This is the thing.
In Nigeria, people borrow and they think they can
There's
get
no
away with
excuse
it.
for it.
80%, 90%. So many big entrepreneurs are surviving on loans. Although we understand you can't do business without taking credit. Perhaps.
Very true.
Thank you, Rote.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Moving on to more business updates, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Good morning to you all. Welcome back, Rotus. Shares in Asia Pacific have got a lot to digest this morning, not just those big jobs numbers from the United States on Friday, but also Chinese exports, which are up actually quite hugely. The balance of China's October balance of trade has got to an all-time high of $84.54 billion. Exports actually surging. They're rushing to fill Christmas orders there, the Western world's Christmas orders at least. Imports, though, didn't rise a great deal, so you can see that balance is quite severe there. The Nikkei down about 0.33%, the Topics index 0.3, Australian stocks also in negative territory. Lots to think about, really, and I think still we have these major fears of wondering what those American jobs actually mean and whether they're looking towards inflation rising around the world. I suspect it probably is. China's coal imports in October nearly doubled from a year ago. The China's state grid said yesterday that power supply and demand in its areas of operation had returned to normal, but it warned of challenges during the winter months. It's raised domestic coal production to multi-year highs. Ore and copper, though, have taken a bit of iron ore and copper have taken a bit of a beating. That just might mitigate inflationary pressures. We'll have to see about that. Let me recap the United States for you then. And we saw that massive increase in non-farm payrolls on Friday, and there was an upward revision to the previous month as well. A high proportion of small businesses intend to hire more staff. That's in the small print of it. And the US House of Representatives has passed the US infrastructure bill, which unlocks $1.2 trillion worth of new spending. Not where it's going to be paid for, just that it's going to be actually spent. And that's now on Joe Biden's desk to sign off. So what about the markets generally? I think strategists appear, from what I'm reading, saying that things will be okay. They're disregarding inflation and saying it's transitory. Biden is talking about the infrastructure bill as being a monumental step forward. It's over $1 trillion, as I said. There was a bitter split, even in the Democratic Party, about all this, but it's finally being pushed through, and it's on his desk to sign. Right, Elon Musk, as you know, has been urged to sell 10% of his stake. He went on Twitter, asked his millions of followers what he should do. They said, yeah, it'd be a pretty good idea to divest yourself of 10% of the company. That'll net him a tax bill of around $4 billion, leaving it to the crowd, as he does, sort of delighted his followers. And they all, 57% of them, that's quite a big majority, said, yep, I think you should divest it and pay your taxes. So that's what apparently he's going to do. Governance by Twitter. What are we coming to? As well, speaking of which, is this country, the Prime Minister's been under increasing pressure to clean out what Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, has called the filthy Augean stables. He's bringing a bit of classical reference in there. One of Hercules' big tasks, as you remember, probably not, maybe you do, to clear out the Augean stables, and the government's handling of the Owen Paterson case. There's going to be an emergency debate in Parliament this afternoon about that. France is now investigating Sanjeev Gupta, known as the saviour of steel in this country. You know that, as I told you on Thursday and Friday last week, that MPs in this country are asking to have a look at Liberty Steel and its management. Now the French are getting involved as well, because there's a lot of Liberty Steel, or rather GFG's assets, GFG's Alliance, which is its company. There are a lot of those in France as well. COP26, just a few details out of that. The UK has pledged £290 million to poorer countries to help them cope with climate change. It's a little drop. The idea is, of course, it should help other people maybe to contribute as well. The developing world is saying it needs $100 billion worth of financial help. So we're a long way from that, but that's maybe a move in the right direction. As far as oil's concerned, over the weekend, Saudi Arabia hiked its crude prices to Asian customers, and add to that the fact that OPEC Plus, as you know from last week, refused to budge to pressure to increase. That's put a sort of pressure under the oil price. Now we're looking at, I'm just looking at this now, about $82.25 a barrel. So it's within that $80 range that we've been talking about for quite a few weeks. That will please people who actually contribute to the market. Consumers will wait to see about that. Gold, now this is a weird one actually. I have no reason for this at all. It exploded above its levels, even though that US data suggested that an interest rate is sooner rather than later, thus a stronger dollar, thus gold costs more, but it still did. Gold rose, it's now $1,818 an ounce. So it's getting there actually. And I'm looking at the latest one now, it's about $18.19 an ounce. Why it's happening? People are presumably liking the precious metal because it gives them a slight help against inflation and risk. That's the global view this Monday morning.
Okay, two things, Michael. Number one, Evergrande can't pay its bondholders. They've started to sell their stuff. In fact, I hear they now sell some of their private jets in their fleets. This is the beginning of the end, obviously. China isn't saying anything big about this. They're trying to control this. Nobody even knows what is coming out of China. I don't know what your take is at that. Secondly, a lot of people are looking at Joe Biden and saying, does this man really know what he's doing about the economy? Obviously not. The American economy is heating up big time. Fears of inflation. The Fed is not doing anything. He still wants to raise more money. And if he passes his bill, which will also increase inflation at some point, then he wants to stifle businesses and collect more taxes from billionaires. There was a vote on Twitter. Oh, Elon Musk, sell off 21 billion worth of your shares in Tesla. Billionaires are losing confidence in the American economy. What is happening to America?
Social media is happening to America, first of all. Again, I have my doubts about whether you should actually be governing the progress of your business on Twitter. But, you know, what can I say? It's the way we move forward. We know the power of social media. We all know what we think about it. There is a generation of people who think that what they see on social media is actually true and important. Good luck to them. They will have to deal with the problems about that. As far as Joe Biden's concerned, I don't know, really. I mean, I suspect that the support that he garnered because of what Trump was doing, he was the least worst option, really. And what we're seeing is that rather fumbled withdrawal from Afghanistan, plus this infrastructure plan. It's not all bad. I mean, the thing about it is it gets people back to work, and it has worked in the United States before. And of course, it does encourage a lot of suppliers like steel, cement, and all those kind of things involved in building infrastructure to get involved. So it's no bad thing. Again, no mention about how it's all going to be paid for. I suspect that's kicking the can further down the line. But what it's doing is, make no mistake about this, it's taking Joe Biden into the midterm elections with a good bit of wind behind him. As far as Evergrande's concerned, I, like you, have no idea. We hear nothing from the Chinese authorities. There's an occasional mention every day. I suspect along the line it may get bailed out. But again, we don't know, because the Chinese don't deal in real money. We don't know what resource. We assume they have billions of their own currency, the yuan, to actually cope with this kind of thing. I have no idea. All I know is that there is a great tradition of China not losing face, and I suspect if Evergrande were allowed to crumble, as the rest of the property companies in China, then there'd be a great deal of loss of face, and that's something that the Chinese politicians do not like.
Well, Michael, we have just about a minute to go, so very quickly. Elon Musk, mobilizing the Twitter masses to vote on how he takes decisions with his own wealth. Unrealized gains are being seen as some kind of tax avoidance. But the question is, now that he's been told to sell 10% of his shares, will he do it? And then secondly, the issue about the U.S. reopening its borders to fully vaccinated persons. I've seen some complaints about shortages, about how tourism industry will be affected, how plates may not be enough, and how toilet rolls may be scarce. Should that be the concern, or the fact that this represents a huge opportunity for businesses?
I think the latter, actually. Tourism used to try to get into the country. I think really what we need to see is whether or not this increases business and trade between the US and the rest of the world, and whether business people actually feel that face-to-face meetings are valuable, because they're the people that pay the airfares and they're the people who get the trade deals going. If you need to do that face-to-face, I think you probably do, but the load of people probably don't, and therefore companies are saving a huge amount of money on Zoom as well. As far as Elon Musk is concerned, as I say, I don't think you should be governing the way a company works on Twitter. I find that rather strange. I mean, what about shareholders? What about normal meetings? What about normal channels? Maybe I'm very old-fashioned, but I prefer to see it rather like that than playing to the crowd. That's what he's done. The good thing is he'll be paying $4 billion worth of tax. Well, good luck to him. He can afford to do that. But again, he's playing to the crowd, and I'm not sure whether that's necessarily a good way forward. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe the world's changed, Doctor.
Well, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Thank you.